Audible is the leading provider of spoken word entertainment and audiobooks, ranging from bestsellers to celebrity memoirs, news, business, and self-development. Every month, members get 1 credit to pick any title, plus 2 Audible originals from a monthly selection, and access to daily news digests from the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and the Washington Post, as well as guided meditation programs. Between a full-time job in IT and a full-time job in podcasting, it gets harder and harder to sit down and read the books I'm interested in. This is where Audible comes in. I can listen on my daily commute, relaxing, or while out running errands and still get in the books I've been wanting to get into. You can download titles and listen offline anytime, anywhere. The app is free and can be installed on all smartphones and tablets. Now you can try Audible risk-free with a special 30-day free trial by visiting audibletrial.com/Nerdery and Murdery. That's audibletrial.com/Nerdery and Murdery. Don't let your busy life get in the way of that great book you've been wanting to read. Go get your free trial of Audible today. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. This is Geoffrey, and we've talked about many times before that I experience problems and struggles with my mental health, and really without a healthy mind, being truly happy and at peace is hard. The good news is therapy does work. It's helped for me, but what is therapy exactly? It's whatever you want it to be. Maybe you're not feeling motivated right now and would like some tools to help. Or maybe you're feeling insecure in relationships at work, or you're not dealing well with stress. Whatever you need, it's really time to stop being ashamed of normal human struggles, and it's time to start feeling better because you deserve to be happy. And now you don't have to worry about finding an in-person therapist near you to help. BetterHelp is a customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can start communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours. So join the millions of people who are seeing what online therapy is really about. It's always a good time to invest in yourself because you are your greatest asset. And there's a special offer to Nerdery and Murdery listeners. You can get 10% off your first month of professional therapy at betterhelp.com/Nerdery and Murdery. That's betterhelp.com/Nerdery and Murdery. Thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this podcast.
So I want to look at mobsters. I want to see movies about music. I want to see movies about comedians getting kidnapped and put into prison and all this other stuff. So I just watched this guy.
Awesome. Welcome to episode 194 of Nerdery and Murdery.
Big 194. I'm Zig with your Nerdery.
And I'm Geoffrey with the Murderer. Welcome to another week of the highs and lows, the ups and downs, the good and the bad, the nerd and the murd. We finished Evil on Friday.
Mm-hmm.
The last season was not as good as the previous three.
Yeah.
And I hated the ending. Hated it. The ending was very anticlimactic and just not up to the quality of everything else. Other than that, I love the show. I just thought that the last season there was a lot lacking from it. A lot of the of I don't know what it had going for it in the first three seasons.
Yeah, it's like they dialed down the creep factor.
Oh, I don't know. They dialed down the creep factor as much as just the stories weren't as good. I don't know. It's just like I said. There was a lot of shock value in the last season. Don't want to give it away. That the show is way too new to give anything away. But what I did love in the fourth season, and I don't know if you noticed this or not, there were like four somewhere between 3 and 5 episodes where you couldn't skip the intro because they
Mhm.
had something funny to say at the bottom of the screen.
Yes.
And that was hysterical. I thought that was really, really cool. Um, but anyway, so we finished it. I enjoyed it. I would recommend watching it. I wish they had ended it differently. Um, but overall, it was really good.
Yeah, they
Uh,
tried to cram that fifth season into like the last 4 or 5 episodes, and it just didn't really. It didn't really. It
it
wasn't as good.
no, it really wasn't.
It
They
wasn't
lost something.
bad,
It wasn't bad. It was not bad.
but it wasn't as good.
Yeah, Chelsea was tired of the show. She was ready for it, Dan. She kept saying, "You can go on and watch the rest of it if you want." I'm like, "No, let's finish it together." So we got through that. I saw this morning that you're in the 20s.
Yes, yes, that wasn't pleasant.
The South Texas weather down here, it just will have a day or two of cold and then 80s.
Hmm.
That we were in the 80s yesterday. 25-mile-an-hour winds while I was trying to golf yesterday. That was a beating. Um, I'd hit a ball in the air and it would go straight, and suddenly a wind gust would come through and just throw my ball a whole nother direction. That was a beating. We're playing in a tournament this afternoon, hence my time factor today. Um, and so I'm hoping that the winds are not going to be quite as high this afternoon. Little difficult to play in something like that. Anyway, that's all I got. You got anything for us? You ready to step into the nerdery side of the house?
I'm ready to talk about Marty Scorsese.
Groovy.
Excellent. Martin Charles Scorsese, born November 17th, 1942, is an American filmmaker. He emerged as a major figure of the new Hollywood era.
I thought it was Scorsese.
Is it Scorsese? I
Yeah.
thought it was Scorsese.
No, I think it's Scorsese. At least that's how I've always heard it.
He emerged as one of the major figures of the new Hollywood era, and he has received many accolades, including the Academy Award, 4 BAFTA Awards, 3 Emmy Awards, a Grammy Award, and 3 Golden Globe Awards. He's been honored with the AFI Life Achievement Award in 1997, the Film Society of Lincoln Center Tribute in 1998, the Kennedy Center Honor in 2007, the Cecil B. DeMille Award in 2010, the BAFTA Fellowship in 2012. 4 of his films have been inducted into the National Film Registry by the Library of Congress as culturally, historically, and as aesthetically significant. He received a Master of Arts degree from New York University's Steinhardt School of Culture, Education, and Human Development in 1968. His directorial debut was Who's That Knocking at My Door in 1967. He was accepted into the Chicago Film Festival in the 70s and 80s decades. Scorsese's films, much influenced by his Italian American background and upbringing in New York City, centered on macho posturing men and explore crime, machismo, nihilism, and Catholic concepts of guilt and redemption. His trademark style includes extensive use of slow motion and freeze frames, graphic depictions of extreme violence, and liberal use of profanity. His 1973 crime film Mean Streets was a blueprint for his filmmaking style. Um, I'd like to talk about Mean Streets.
Okay.
Um, Mean Streets is a rough indie movie that he basically used as a template to make all of his big big budget pictures. Robert De Niro and Harvey Keitel as these two street level enforcers for the mob, just run around causing chaos. Well, okay, Robert De Niro causes chaos. Um, um, Harvey Keitel is trying to keep him in line, and it ends up coming to some really harsh stuff in toward the end of the film. But it's shot in New York. It looks like New York. It's dirty. It's grimy. It's everything that he uses later on. Those slow tracking shots where you go down and through a bar and through the back and everything. That's all down to Mean Streets. Um, I want to say he kind of centered most of his career on that. Now he did some other stuff as well, like where it's not just mob pictures. It's not all Casino and Goodfellas. Um, he also did like The Last Waltz with the band, which was a basically a love letter to this music that he was really fond of. It's probably one of the best concert films I've ever seen. It was shot over 2 days at the um, ballroom, a ballroom in San Francisco.
At the ballroom.
The ballroom. I can't. I've got it in my notes here somewhere. I got 18 pages of notes. I'm not going to go through them all, but I did want to touch off on that. And it's beautiful. It's well shot. It's well. The sound is really good, and it's like you're sitting in the room watching it. Even watching it on your television as opposed to in a movie theater. Um, and he would do some other less gritty films like The King of Comedy. King of Comedy, in my opinion, is great. A lot of people didn't care for it, but it's basically the story of the film The Joker that came out a few years ago. It's very King of Comedy. Uh, this one up and coming comedian basically gets rid of an old one and takes his place.
And I
With
and I'm in the camp. I did not like the King of Comedy.
King of Comedy, yeah,
No.
it's very dark. Um, you've also got Raging Bull, which is a story about Jake LaMotta, the boxer. Um, Goodfellas and Casino, those were both pretty high profile gangster pictures.
Raging Bull won an Oscar, if I recall
Yes,
correctly, for Best Picture.
yes.
Yeah,
The Departed
which
was
is phenomenal.
yeah. He said it in Boston, and it's more of a Boston um, crime picture, and he got a bunch of kids from Boston to be in it.
The Departed won Best Picture.
Yeah. Oh, I love The Departed. Um, I think The Departed was um, kind of in his wheelhouse. I like The Departed better than I do Casino or Goodfellas. Um,
And Goodfellas is really good. I mean, he's got so much good stuff.
yeah, yeah, but that's the thing. A lot of people think it's just mob movies. No, he did some. Shutter Island is his. The Wolf of Wall Street is him.
The Color of
Um,
Money,
mhm.
another Oscar winner.
Killer of the Flower Moon is a really great one, but that was dark. After Hours, that's the one that people forget that he did. It was a comedy film about a guy running through New York City trying to meet this woman, and how his whole world gets turned upside down in a night. The Last Temptation of Christ, The Age of Innocence, Kundun, Hugo, and Silence. In addition to films, Scorsese's directed episodes of some television series, including the HBO series Boardwalk Empire and Vinyl. And I loved Vinyl. I thought Vinyl was great. As well as HBO documentary Public Speaking, a Netflix docuseries Pretend It's a City. He's also known for several of the rock music, uh, which I talked about, like The Last Waltz, No Direction Home, Shine a Light, and George Harrison Living in the Material World. He's also a big advocate for film preservation and restoration. He founded the nonprofit organization, the Film Foundation, in 1990, the World Cinema Foundation in 2007, and the African Film Heritage Project in 2017. Strangely enough, he's heavily influenced by the 1957 to 58 Powell and Pressburg films Black Narcissus and The Red Shoes, which are they're world cinema, and they're very, very uh, film nerd. Black Narcissus, that's not one a lot of people have seen. The Red Shoes, even less so, because they were essentially not American, even though they were in English. A Personal Journey with Martin Scorsese through American movies, which is a documentary he did. I would recommend anybody check that out because he talks about all the stuff that influenced him. He was enamored with historical epics, when he was a teenager. Land of the Pharaohs and El Cid. Um, he was also big on Italian neorealism, which was part of the French New Wave, like Bicycle Thieves, Rome, Open City, and Pisa. Um, he was influenced a view or portrayal of the Sicilian roots in the documentary Il mio viaggio in Italia, or My Voyage to Italy. Um, and he also really, really uh, got all over Pisa, which is an Italian film. Um, he also is into the French New Wave too. He cited works of Satya Ray, Igmar Bergman, Andre Wajda, Michelangelo Antonino, Federico Fellini, Ishiro Honda, and E.G. Tubishihara. Um, Scorsese attended an all-boys school, Cardinal Hayes High School in the Bronx, graduating in 1960. He initially desired to become a priest, attending a preparatory seminary, but failed after the first year. This gave way to cinema, and consequently, Scorsese enrolled in NYU's Washington Square College, known as College of Arts and Science, where he earned a BA in English in '64. He went on to earn his Master of Arts at New York University School of Education, now the Steinhardt School of Cultural Education and Human Development, in '68. But back then, it was just the School of Education. And he was basically like the second year that school was open. He did go to the Tisch School of Arts. He made a short film, What's a Nice Girl Like You Doing in a Place Like This, in 1963. And then he made It's Not Just You, Murray, in 1964, both shorts. His most famous short of the period is the darkly comic The Big Shave in 1967, which features Peter Bernuth. The film is an indictment of Americans' involvement in Vietnam, suggesting by its alternative title, Viet 67. Scorsese has mentioned on several occasions that he is greatly inspired in his early days in the New York University by film professor Haig Monahan, and also Brian Baird. So Scorsese also worked with some of the other people in Hollywood as well as New York, but he was kind of in the sphere of John Cassavetes. John Cassavetes made these indie gangster pictures or street pictures in New York, and then he would go back to LA with his wife Ellen Burstyn, and they would make a regular movie as actors. They would use that money to go back to New York and make these little black and white independent films. Um, it was because of John Cassavetes that Scorsese got introduced to Roger Corman, um, who encouraged him to make the Depression era exploiter Boxcar Bertha, which was basically his big movie directorial debut. This is also where he met Francis Ford Coppola, James Cameron, and John Sayles, who, Roger Corman also helped launch their careers. He then made Mean Streets, which was this dark gangster picture about the streets of New York, which was, for an indie movie, it was really popular. Not as big as like Pulp Fiction was or any of that, but it would be more like in the modern era, you got, Pulp Fiction, which was a big hit. But right before that, Tarantino made Reservoir Dogs. Mean Streets was more like Reservoir Dogs. Like a lot of people saw it, but not nearly as many as did Taxi Driver, which was his next film. And he really kind of liked to champion these people being kicked around, these characters who are dark and sinister, but also part of the city, and they're showing the city's degradation. Because again, this is New York City in the late 1970s, where there's no money, the trash isn't being picked up. This is also the birth of hip hop and punk rock starts in New York City about the same time. So he's kind of cataloging the decline of the city as well as, these music genres. Oh, excuse me. Taxi Driver did win the Palme d'Or at Cannes or Cannes. Um, he also did some Broadway stuff. He wrote The Act with Liza Minnelli. It did not have a great reputation in New York, and it drove Scorsese into depression. And he, at this point, had developed a pretty serious cocaine addiction. Um, it was at this time he did The Last Waltz with a band at the Winterland Ballroom in San Francisco. Um, and they released it on Thanksgiving Day of 1976. Of course, you had the band, but you also had Bob Dylan, Neil Young, Ringo Starr, Muddy Waters, Joni Mitchell, Van Morrison, Paul Butterfield, Neil Diamond, Ronnie Wood, and Eric Clapton all played, doing various band songs. Um, Robert De Niro saved Scorsese's life by several accounts right after he made The Last Waltz. De Niro persuaded him to kick cocaine addiction to make him his highly regarded film Raging Bull, because Scorsese got to where he really couldn't work. He was kind of crazy. So De Niro, who was his buddy, who he'd known for years and years and years, he'd met through that whole Tisch school thing. Because again, not many people realize this. De Niro's father, Robert De Niro, is actually Robert De Niro Jr. His father was a very highly and well-regarded painter in New York circles. Robert De Niro Sr. So he was really in the whole arts thing. What was amazing about De Niro's life is he's when he goes to stay with his dad, who lives in another part of the city, Greenwich. He's surrounded by all these art types and avant-garde folks again, because the same thing is happening. You've got Andy Warhol going on, and you've got the punk rock scene and the hip hop scene going on. He's exposed to all of that when he's a kid, and then he goes to his middle class or lower middle class working neighborhood where he lives with his mom, where he meets mobsters and stuff like that. Scorsese has the exact same upbringing, although he didn't really have the famous dad. But this is why those two are so close, because they basically had the same upbringing, and really nobody else they know had that. Which is why they like to work together. They're great friends, and they've been great friends since they were very, very young. Well, I say very young, like 17, 18. He's also won a lot of awards for, again, Raging Bull and things like that. He won an award. He lost an editing award to Robert Redford for Ordinary People, which kind of bothered him because he always thought that his editing was better than Redford's. The screenplay for Raging Bull was credited to Paul Schrader and Martin, who wrote Mean Streets. The finished script differed extensively from Schrader's original draft, and it was rewritten several times by various writers, including Jay Cox, who ended up co-scripting The Age of Innocence and Gangs of New York. And again, Raging Bull was a huge film. It was about this time that Scorsese wanted to kind of get away from like gangster pictures, because he'd done Mean Streets and he'd done Raging Bull and things like that. He wanted to do something a little different. This is when he did After Hours. He won the Best Director award at Cannes for After Hours, but he made an aesthetic shift back to pared down, almost underground filmmaking style. And it was basically a night in Soho, neighborhood of Manhattan. You had Griffin Dunne, who'd just come off of American Werewolf in London. Terry Garr and Cheech and Chong, plus Rosanna Arquette. And it's all these crazy, crazy people running around New York. Right after that, he did The Color of Money, which is a sequel to The Hustler with Paul Newman.
A lot of people don't know that too.
Yeah. A lot of people don't know that Scorsese did that.
And Color of Money is, and I know you hate Tom Cruise,
I just don't think he's a good actor. Everybody else in that movie is great. Tom Cruise,
He's pretty good in that movie.
he's
For what he does exactly, he acts exactly how he's supposed to act in that movie.
he's a dumb punk kid. And yeah,
Yes.
if you need a dumb punk kid, get Tom Cruise. Well, when he was young, get Tom Cruise. You can't get him as a dumb punk kid now. But yeah, I mean, I think anybody could have played that role. I'm gonna be honest.
And
Um,
that's your overall opinion of Tom Cruise, which
yeah,
I'm going
yeah,
to
yeah. He's
disagree with
because
you on quite a
because
bit.
he's fucking terrible.
Eh.
Paul Newman was exceptional. Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio? Am I saying that right?
Was that
She was,
was that her in that?
I think so. God,
Uh,
look at my notes. Anyway,
I
the
can look it up.
female lead was incredible in that film.
Yes, you're right.
Yeah. Everybody in that movie was great. And again, I didn't mind Tom Cruise so much because he was fill in the blank punk kid. I think anybody could have played that role. He didn't pull me out of that movie like he does other movies. You know what I mean? So
No.
I'm also okay with him in Legend for the same reason because he doesn't pull me out of it. When I see him in a movie, he just automatically pulls me out of it. That's why I don't like it. And I don't want to be pulled out. If I want to be pulled out by something, I want it to be like, oh my God, that lighting is beautiful, or wow, I really like the way they shot that. Over that dude's shoulder. You know, I never would have thought of that. That's really brilliant. That I don't mind. When the acting is like, oh my God, he's just being a movie star. It's the same reason why I don't. There's a lot of old Hollywood pictures I don't like for the exact same reason because it'll be like I'm watching it, I'm watching it, I'm watching it. Oh, look, you're vamping for the camera. Good for you. And it pulls me out of the story. I didn't get pulled out of The Color of Money, and I've seen it several times. I haven't been pulled out of Legend too, which is why I like that one. Um, Scorsese's next picture was The Last Temptation of Christ, and he got a lot of flack for that.
Oh, yeah, it was very controversial.
Yeah, I still say it's a good picture, but I mean, it's a passion movie. Yeah. Um, he started work on that in 1983, and he spent years doing it. Um, and he also shot Michael Jackson's video for Bad. And the dancing in the subway and stuff was all inspired by West Side Story, which when I read that note, I was like, oh, that makes sense. Yeah.
And
Um,
I apologize for Color of Money. It did not win Best Picture. It won Best Screenplay,
yeah. Yeah.
but it
Oh,
did
it
win
was,
Best Actor and Best Supporting and Best Art Direction. Sorry about that.
yeah. I think Paul Newman got the,
He did. He got Best
yeah.
Actor.
Yeah.
Oh, and
Man,
it
Paul,
was nominated for Best Screenplay. No, it didn't
yeah.
win. I could have sworn it was nominated for Best Picture, but it did get. There's a couple of award ceremonies that got. Anyway, bygones. Move on.
Yeah. Moving along. Um, yeah. So his next big picture after, he'd done a few music videos with Color Money was Goodfellas. Goodfella, Goodfellas was kind of where everybody wanted. They wanted him to do a gritty New York picture. So he does Goodfellas. Even though, it doesn't quite take place all in New York. It takes place kind of all over. Um, but it's a gangster epic. The opening shot where they're tracking through the back of the hotel in the early 1960s is probably one of the best pieces of film that dude's ever done. Um, De Niro and Joe Pesci offered a virtuous display of Scorsese's bravura cinematic technique in the film and reestablished, enhanced, and consolidated his reputation. Uh, is one of the things that the critics said, which I thought was a little wordy for, wow, he really did this well. A lot of people say it's the best mob movie ever. I don't know about that. Mean Street's pretty hardcore, but
It's
it is it is
it's
in
an
the top 10
outstanding. It's an
gangster
outstanding
films.
mob movie.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who later starred in The Sopranos in
Yeah.
Goodfellas.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. A lot of a few ex-mob people like Polly Walnuts.
Hmm.
Um, he did do a short form documentary called Made in Milan about Giorgio Armani, probably for some costuming. Um, and then in 1991 he did a remake of Cape Fear, um, which I wasn't mad at. I mean, it's not my favorite. Um, I think I would have picked another movie to remake. Cape Fear is just not. It wasn't a great movie to begin with, but I think his version of it's better than the original. Um, I like De Niro in it. He was a little over the top, but he was pretty good. Juliette Lewis was incredible in that movie too.
Well,
Um,
she and Nick, excuse me, she and De Niro were nominated for Best Actor
yeah.
and Best
Oh
Supporting for
yeah.
that one.
Yeah, they were. Again, I thought De Niro was a little over the top, but again, the character he was playing was also a little over the top. And Robert Mitchum, who was originally in Cape Fear, was actually in that film for just a few minutes. He did a cameo, which I thought was great. Um, Scorsese acted in a small role as Vincent Van Gogh in the film Dreams by Japanese director Akira Kurosawa. Um, so in Dreams by Akira Kurosawa, it's these vignettes, and you basically go to France um, in this vignette, and you see this Japanese man walking along, and he goes and he sits and he talks to Vincent Van Gogh. The film goes from Japanese to French, but when he's talking to Scorsese, Scorsese's speaking in English. It's really, really odd and bizarre, but it's almost like you step into a Vincent Van Gogh painting for a minute. Um, if you never get a chance to see the Dreams, I think I may have even put that in here in our playlist. If not, I will because it's just beautiful. Even though it's not actually Scorsese, it's just him acting. Um, yeah, I did. It's called The Crows was a section. There are a lot of scenes in here. There are a lot of like a personal journey with Martin Scorsese, where he talks about film, which is a three-parter. Each one is over an hour in our playlist, so give yourself time with that. The full film Kundun. I got some clips from Bringing Out the Dead, The Aviator, The Departed, Shutter Island, Hugo, Wolf of Wall Street. So yeah, just a little bit of everything. I put it in that playlist. Keep in mind the those documentaries that he did about his personal journey with film. He goes in deep, and he is a scholar first and foremost. He is a student of film, which I like. I think that's why I like him so much. Um, he also produced some other stuff: Mad Dog and Glory, Clockers, The Grifters, Naked in New York, Grace in My Heart, Search and Destroy, The High Low Country, and With Closed Eyes, Kon Gli Ochi Chihiusu, which was a Kurosawa movie. The Age of Innocence, he also directed that. So he's kind of all over the place with his directing style. Most people think of him as just doing these mobster movies, but it's not. He hits everything, and he has a way of taking these European or art house films and distilling them down in a way that people can understand them here. Because he does, he borrows a lot from those people, not outright stealing. He does his own take on it, but you'll be able to see a Scorsese film that's in the same genre, the same vein as one of those, and it's a little more palatable. Then you go and see the film, and it makes more sense to you. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
Yeah, he can distill them down. He has done he did a documentary on public speaking too in 2010 for Netflix. Just as an aside, just like, hey, this is how you do public speaking. That's all it is. It's incredible. It's not very long, but yeah, he kind of teaches you how to do that. Um, he's also he's a big reader, which is why Killer of the Flower Moon was I think his last big project. That and The Irishman. because he liked those books. Um, but yeah, overall, Scorsese's just this. I don't want to say he's an auteur, but he's a good director, and he brings a lot of both sides of the world into his view screen, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
That's why I like him because it's all over the place, but it when you sit down and watch it, it all makes sense. Which is what I like because I like those weird European or indie movies sometimes. They're brilliant and great. They're just pieces of art, you know.
Well, and
They're
as I'm looking here, I mean, just a testament to how good he is. He's been nominated for 101 Academy Awards, and he's won
Mhm.
20.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He's out there. I would recommend our people go out and check out our YouTube playlist just to kind of see because I did it chronologically, so it's all the way back to the early stuff, and you just keep rolling through. It's like, my God, this guy's done has an amazing body of work. Well, yeah, he's been working since he was, a teenager. And he's it is what, 70s now? He's very prolific. Plus all the stuff that he's produced, people he's helped out because it's like, oh, when Akira Kurosawa was because you remember Akira Kurosawa, he had the most popular films in Japan for years, and then he didn't, and nobody wanted to see his stuff because it was old. He couldn't get it produced. Scorsese is the reason why he was able to do the last few films. He was pretty close to. I think he even had a suicide attempt at one point, sadly. So him and George Lucas and um, some of the other auteur directors who have been using his stuff for a while, uh, funded his last two or three pictures, including Dreams, um, which is incredible. Again, I've got the Crow scene in our YouTube playlist. You guys should go through that. Give yourself some time. Um, you may want to skip through the documentaries until you can, because there's three of them. You may want to skip those and just look at some of the scenes first, and then go back into those documentaries. They're worth the watch, but there's probably 12 hours in that playlist. So again, give yourself some time with it. But that's about it for Martin Scorsese. Again, I had like 18 pages, but I didn't want to boil a bunch of facts and figures at you other than just he's brilliant. Um,
Absolutely. I mean, if I were to throw ones out that I would say are must watch, Raging Bull, Color of Money, Goodfellas, Casino, and The Departed.
yeah,
I would say a lot of people really like Wolf of Wall Street.
uh-huh.
I thought it was good. I didn't think it was as great as everybody said.
Yeah. I like Wolf of Wall Street. It's also funny, but I don't think it's as funny as After Hours. I think people should sit down and check out After Hours for just this. It's in the mid '80s, and this guy just gets his entire world gets turned upside down in an evening.
Well, and The Departed, as you know, it's a brilliant film. It's an excellent film. It also, as of the time it was released, that may be have changed now, but it was in the Guinness Book of World Records as the most uses of the word "fuck" in a movie.
It's not surprising. It took place in Boston.
Yeah,
That's like a chisel or speckle. They speckle it in their language.
right.
But yeah, that's about it for Martin Scorsese, other than get out and check him out. See
Awesome.
what he does. He's ooh.
Yeah, somebody let us know if it's Scorsese or Scorsese.
I
I'd
will
always
still
heard
think I think it's
Scorsese,
actually
but
Scorsese. Everybody says Scorsese, but I think it's pronounced Scorsese.
maybe I don't know. I'd always heard Scorsese. So
It's
awesome,
Marty. That's what everybody calls him. Marty.
awesome. Well, thanks for the trip with that.
Sure.
With that, we'll step over to the murdery side of the house.
Murder.
For today, I got my information off CBS News, Oxygen, Medium, Wikipedia. Today, NBC News, and The Independent. There is no way that you don't know about this one. This is the murder of Laci and Conner Peterson.
Laci and Conner Peterson.
You don't know this one?
Mm-mm.
Scott Peterson?
Yeah.
Yes, this was his wife and well, you'll see. I've had this one on my list for a while. I've heard multiple podcasts cover it. I've heard some very good podcasts um, on this. So now it's my turn. This one was all over the news, and
Oh yeah, yeah, I remember this.
there's really so much to unravel here. So here we go. So it was the morning of December 24th, 2002. 27-year-old Laci Peterson was 8 months pregnant with her first child, and she mysteriously vanished from her home in Modesto, California. She was a beloved wife, daughter, and friend, and she was eagerly anticipating the arrival of her baby boy, whom she and her husband, Scott Peterson, had planned to name Connor. So, again, it was the day before Christmas. Families across the country were preparing for holiday festivities. But Laci's loved ones were instead thrust into a nightmare that would stretch on for months, captivate the nation, and ultimately lead to one of the most controversial murder convictions in American history. Laci, Roca, and Scott Peterson met in college. They married in 1997 and settled in what appeared to be a picture perfect life in Modesto. In the beginning of their marriage, they lived apart because Scott was still attending school 130 miles away. And this is where Scott would conduct at least two affairs with college students, Janet and Kathy. And later, two more women would come forward to police saying they also had affairs with Scott. Both stories were found to be true.
Mm-hmm.
The affair with Janet lasted for several months, and she had no idea that Scott was married until she went to his apartment one night to surprise him and found him in bed with Laci. There
Oh, I bet
was,
that was awkward.
yeah, no kidding. There was no violent history in Scott's past. However, it did appear that he would change his personality to fit with his current girlfriend. Laci was described by friends and family as vibrant, loving, and excited to become a mother. She had fully embraced her pregnancy because she had always wanted to be a mother. Scott was a handsome, charming fertilizer salesman, and he seemed to be a doting husband. However, Scott either never wanted to be a father or he changed his mind at some point after finding out Laci was pregnant. Um, to the outside world, they were the ideal American couple. They were a young married pair, and they were excited to start a family. But investigators would later uncover that Scott Peterson was living a double life. In the months leading up to Laci's disappearance, he had begun an affair with a woman named Amber Fry, I think it's Fry, telling her he was a single man who had lost his wife. And his behavior, both before and after Laci went missing, would raise red flags that ultimately led to his arrest and conviction.
Wait a minute, you said was a fertilizer salesman?
Uh-huh.
He was a salesman.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all of this tracks now.
Right. Scott Peterson later told police that he last saw his wife that morning around 9:30 a.m. before he left to go fishing at the Berkeley Marina, which was about 90 miles away. According to his version of events, Laci had been planning to take their golden retriever Mackenzie for a walk in the neighborhood before preparing for Christmas dinner with family. Around 10:18 a.m., a neighbor spotted Mackenzie wandering the street, leash attached, but no signs of Laci. That afternoon, when Scott returned home, he found the house empty. He was expecting to find his wife, Laci, who was 8 months pregnant with their first child, getting ready for Christmas Eve dinner with her parents at 5:30 p.m. Instead, he found their dog in the backyard with his leash on, but Laci was nowhere to be found, and Laci's car was in the driveway. He then this is weird. He then washed his clothes, had some pizza, and then eventually called Laci's mother, Sharon, asking if she was with her, which I found kind of odd. She, I guess I guess I could play devil's advocate and see it. Her car's in the driveway and she's missing. She's not home, and the dog's in the backyard with the leash. To
Hmm?
me, red flags would be raised at this point.
Yeah, call somebody. Hey, hey, did you come pick her up?
And this is going to be some of the key evidence for the police too. They're going to
And
point to some of these events.
he washed his clothes.
Washed his clothes.
Hello, that's the way to get rid of evidence.
Possibly. So, a lot of this will kind of raise some red flags to police. Um, by that evening, Laci was officially reported missing, and a search began. Laci's mom went out to look for her, and Laci's stepdad called the police to report her missing at 5:47 p.m. There were over 900 family, friends, and volunteers who combed the area while police questioned Scott about his whereabouts. Police were also dispatched to a local park where Laci routinely went to walk their dog daily in the Peterson home. So, as I kind of mentioned, what the things that Scott did, something about his demeanor troubled investigators. He seemed very oddly detached, unemotional, and uninterested in participating in the search for his pregnant wife.
Hmm.
At the park, Sharon, Laci's mom, noticed that Scott appeared to be unusually calm. Laci initially had plans that day to shop and bake gingerbread cookies, but there was no evidence found to suggest that she had done any of these things. Scott initially could not answer officers' questions about his fishing trip, such as what he was fishing for or what kind of bait he used. Devil's advocate here.
Hmm.
You never know how you're going to react to a missing loved one.
Hmm.
So, devil's advocate, he could be in shock. And
Hmm.
that could be where the calm demeanor is, because people are going to react different ways, and he could be internalizing everything. The whole thing that he could not answer officers' questions about the trip as what he's fishing or the bait he was used. Again, I'm going to go to that side of the fence. He could just be in shock. So, anyway, you decide for yourself.
um, uh, he was fishing off the pier. He was probably fishing with cut bait
Well, possibly, but he couldn't tell police. So, that's
because he wasn't fishing.
maybe not. Scott did tell investigators he decided that morning to go fishing. He owned a 14-foot aluminum Sears game fisher, and he stored this boat in the warehouse where he worked. Um, he was the only employee who worked out of the warehouse, and he was worried about his bosses finding out that he stored his boat there. That morning, after he decided to go fishing, he went to the warehouse and got his boat, and then drove to a marina an hour and a half away, arriving at 12:54 p.m. He stayed out on the water for about an hour and a half, got gas, dropped the boat off, went home, ate pizza, threw his clothes in the washer, took a shower, and then called Laci's mom. Said all this previously, but this is what he has now told police.
Hmm.
Initially, there was a $25,000 reward offered, which was later increased to $250,000, and finally to $500,000 for information leading to Laci's safe return. Um, we've talked about this so many times. In high profile missing person cases, spouses are very often the first to fall under scrutiny.
Yeah.
In Scott's case, it didn't take long for detectives to find reasons to doubt his story. In
Yeah,
the
because
days,
everything he said could be tracked. He went to the warehouse to get the boat, took the boat to the marina, gassed it up. You got to pay. You got to pay the marina. You got to pay for the gas. They don't let you just drop your boat off for free. That's just not how that works.
we don't know
Somebody would have
we
seen him.
we don't know that because so there's nobody that saw him go fishing.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Nobody saw him. Um,
If he gassed up the boat, somebody would have saw him. I'm sorry.
potentially,
Yeah.
potentially, but nobody did, or nobody that came forward at
Hmm.
any rate. Um, Scott would make some very curious decisions the days following the disappearance. After his first interview, a detective noted that Scott was casual and nonchalant, bored, tired, and devoid of urgency. So that's where I flip back to the other side of the fence. I think the initial shock, yeah, maybe.
Hmm.
Days later, I don't think you're still going to be casual and nonchalant. I figured you'd
Yep.
be kind of panicked. But anyway, during this interview, Scott also asked for information on therapy and counseling. He initially agreed to take a polygraph, but the next day when he was supposed to take it, he called to say he changed his mind. He seemed more concerned about avoiding the media than finding his wife, even
Hmm.
though Laci's family held press conferences and pleaded for information.
Yeah.
Um, in the days following, tracking dogs picked up her scent for over a mile on the same path that Scott would have taken to get from his warehouse to the marina. Uh,
Oh.
his truck revealed several small stains that tested positive for blood.
Hmm.
Additionally, several friends and family members expressed to police that Laci had been growing increasingly uncomfortable in her pregnancy and often experienced shortness of breath. Basically, they found it unlikely she could go out for a walk.
Mm-hmm.
She had been extremely tired and exhausted in the days preceding her disappearance, and neighbors had also noticed that lately Laci had not been going on her regular walks as frequently. The Peterson home was thoroughly searched, and hundreds of items were collected as evidence. Interestingly, all the jewelry that Scott described Laci as wearing the last time he saw her was found in her jewelry box. Investigators also soon discovered that Scott's boat was a new purchase, so new that Laci's mom and stepdad didn't even know he bought it. His own parents didn't even know, and who knows if Laci even knew he bought the boat. Then the big red flag comes out. On December 30th, a woman called the tip line after seeing Laci's story on the news, claiming to be Scott's girlfriend. This was Amber Fry.
Mm-hmm.
Scott and Amber met in late 2002, and on their first date around Thanksgiving, Scott told Amber about his house in Modesto with a Land Rover. He said he never used that house and wanted to sell it fully furnished with a car. Amber introduced Scott to her daughter on their second date, and a couple of weeks later, Scott took playing the dad role very well and very quickly. And on the night of December 14th, Amber asked Scott to accompany her to a fundraiser formal. He told her he wasn't seeing anyone else, he was monogamous, and that she should introduce him as her boyfriend. At first, Scott told Amber that he'd never been married, but a couple of weeks later, he broke down sobbing, saying he'd, quote, lost his wife, and this was his first holiday without her. He did not clarify what he meant by lost and told her he didn't want to talk about it anymore. At this point, we do know Laci was still alive and well. The morning after the Christmas party that Scott and Amber attended, he mentioned his desire to get a vasectomy and that he wanted no kids of his own. And later, when detectives presented Scott with a photograph of him and Amber at the Christmas party, he denied being the man in the photo and knowing the woman. He said he had not dated anyone besides Laci since before his marriage. Lies.
Wasn't me. Wasn't me.
Investigators obtained recordings of Scott's conversation with Amber after Laci's disappearance. Amber fully cooperated with the police in building a case against Scott. He didn't know it, but she had been recording all their calls. He was very evasive when Amber found out about Laci missing. He lied about the efforts he was making to find her, even telling Amber he had taken a polygraph test. And in some of these calls, he continued to lie, telling Amber he was traveling in Europe on business, even while he was attending Laci's vigil. His deceptive behavior, combined with the growing inconsistencies in his statements, convinced detectives that Scott Peterson was involved in his wife's disappearance. About a week and a half into the investigation, Scott asked the detectives if they thought Laci was dead. Upon hearing the chance of Laci being alive was growing smaller with each passing day, Scott did not cry. However, that night he had a breakdown and cried for about 30 minutes while Laci's friends comforted him. Oddly, he had no loss of appetite and helped himself to a plate of donated food afterwards. Again, you don't know what somebody's going to do when they're grieving, so I'm not
some
saying
people eat, some people don't.
Right. Scott's friends did begin to question the fishing alibi and noticed his strange behavior, such as not wanting to talk to the media and adding porn channels to their cable subscription. Scott could turn his tears off and on at will. This was captured several times on police audio surveillance tapes. A few days after the story about Amber came out, Scott inquired with two different realtors about putting his and Laci's house on the market, fully furnished. He also called a local dealership about selling Laci's Land Rover and buying a truck. And in late January, that's exactly what he did. He sold Laci's car and bought a brand new Dodge truck. Even prior to Laci's disappearance, Scott was exhibiting strange behavior. Her friends reported that during her pregnancy, Scott's behavior included things like not being excited or emotional when he learned Laci was pregnant, dragging his feet on insurance so Laci could see a doctor, and question other men about their sex life, post-baby, quality, and frequency.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't sure that Scott even wanted to have a baby. Later on, Laci's family held a sunset candlelight vigil for Laci and baby Conner on her due date. 3 days later, Scott's family held a press conference stating they were contacting hospitals and clinics all over the U.S. to see if Laci had given birth there. Scott did not attend either of these events. On January 15th, detectives broke the news of Scott's affair to both Scott's and Laci's parents ahead of the story breaking the following day on the National Enquirer. When confronted with the details, including photos of Scott and Amber, Laci's mom broke down and asked, quote, "Why did he have to kill her?" This may have been the point where her parents began to believe Scott knew exactly what happened to Laci and exactly where she and Conner were. Detectives tried to reassure them they were still investigating this as a missing persons case, not a homicide, and they didn't want the Rokas losing hope. Later that day, Sharon called Scott to confront him about Laci. She was angry and accused Scott of knowing where Laci and Conner were. And like he always did, Scott denied everything and remained calm throughout the conversation. Scott then began making plans to go to Mexico, such as getting $50,000 from her parents and relocating his dog to their home for an extended period of time. On February 1st, Scott's only employee alerted detectives that Scott was planning on leaving the country in 2 days, and he wanted the employee to go with him. This employee said he would let police know if Scott indicated he would not be coming back to the U.S. However, this did turn out to be a legitimate business trip. Sharon Roca made several attempts to appeal to Scott's humanity and begged him to tell them where Laci was. But yet Scott still insisted he had nothing to do with Laci's disappearance, and he went so far as to set up his own, quote, non-police tip line for finding Laci. In mid-February, he claimed he had only received a few calls and only one real tip, which he passed on to detectives. Interestingly, though, there was raw footage of a news interview with Scott during which the phone rings and he gets up, silences the phone, returns, and tells the reporter she can continue the interview. So for months, the search continued. Investigators were closely monitoring Scott's actions. Throughout the entire search for Laci, Scott still persistently pursued Amber. And in late February, with approval from police, Amber cut off all contact with Scott, but he continued to email her. There was a subsequent search of the Peterson home, and detectives invited Laci's sister, Amy, to examine Laci's clothing drawers, and Amy found several dirty items of clothing stuffed in a drawer on top of clean clothes, which is something Laci would never do. And also of note, these clothes were not present during detectives' initial search in December.
Huh.
They discovered that Scott had also started using Conner's nursery for storage. This was less than 2 months since Laci's disappearance. This is not really thought of as reliable, but experts did perform a voice stress analysis using videotape media interviews Scott had given. They concluded Scott was lying about several things, including what happened to Laci and that Scott knew Laci was never coming home. In March of 2003, police publicly announced the reclassification of Laci's case from missing person to homicide. This would be because the case would take a grim turn. A couple was walking their dog near the Richmond Inner Harbor on the northeast shore of the San Francisco Bay, and they stumbled upon the remains of a fetus. Race and gender could not be immediately determined. Less than 24 hours later, the body of an adult female was discovered in the East Bay Park near where Scott said he was fishing on Christmas Eve. The body had no head or hands, and the legs were missing below the knees. The body was presumed to be a female due to the bra and remnants of pants found around the torso. She was decomposed so heavily that her spine was visible and all organs were missing from the stomach area. Police did collect a 12 to 14-inch piece of duct tape from the front of the pants.
Was she in the water?
There was a point where she was in the water, yes.
Okay, that's why there's, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Detectives informed Laci's family of the discoveries on the afternoon of April 14th. Scott was nowhere to be found. The coroner could not determine if the baby had gone through the birthing process or was otherwise expelled from her body, but that it had been in utero until recently. But they did find no human-made incisions. He was estimated to be 33 to 38 weeks and had not survived outside the womb, but the cause of death for the fetus could not be determined. The female body had extensive fish activity, and it was determined that her body had separated in the water and it was not dismembered. The coroner did note that she had 3 broken ribs that appeared to occur shortly before her death. An independent review concluded that the broken ribs were the result of one single violent blow, such as a kick. The toxicology report found no drugs or poison, and her cause of death could not be determined at all. So the discovery of Laci and Conner changed the case status again from missing person homicide and allowed detectives to expand their investigation of Scott as the prime suspect. The FBI and Modesto Police Department performed forensic searches of the Peterson home. Using mitochondrial DNA testing, the FBI linked a hair wrapped around a pair of pliers found in Scott's fishing boat to hairs recovered from Laci's hairbrush. Police searched Scott's truck, toolbox, and warehouse and found a homemade concrete anchor in the boat Scott purchased 2 weeks before he reported Laci missing. Scott told detectives he used a 90-pound bag of concrete to make one boat anchor and used the rest of the concrete to repair his driveway. Detective Henry Dodge searched Scott's warehouse on December 27th, and he found a cement powder on the boat trailer and 5 circular marks matching the size and shape of the bucket used to make the anchor. He also found a sledgehammer and dustpan covered with cement powder. Prosecutors later would allege that Scott made 5 anchors and used 4, one tied to each of Laci's wrists and ankles, to sink Laci's body in the San Francisco Bay. Within days of DNA testing confirming the identities of the bodies, Scott Peterson was arrested in La Jolla, California. His appearance shocked even those who had already doubted him. He had dyed his hair blonde, grown a goatee, and was carrying around $15,000 cash, camping gear, several credit cards, a full wardrobe, 4 cell phones, Mexican currency, and his brother's ID.
He was running.
That's what it looked like. After Scott was arrested, police searched the San Francisco Bay for anchors, but nothing was found. Despite the circumstantial nature of the evidence, the prosecution painted a damning picture of Scott Peterson as a selfish man who wanted out of his marriage and impending fatherhood. The prosecution's case lasted 19 weeks with 175 witnesses. Scott had financial struggles, was unfaithful, and had shown a shocking lack of concern for his missing wife. The fishing alibi, combined with the discovery of the bodies in the bay, sealed his fate in the mind of many jurors. The defense argued that there was no direct evidence linking Scott to Laci's murder, no blood, no weapon, no eyewitnesses. The defense's case was 6 days and 15 witnesses, and they also pointed out that a burglary had taken place near the Peterson home on December 24th, trying to raise the possibility that Laci had witnessed a crime and had been abducted. The jury, however, was unmoved. On November 12, 2004, Scott Peterson was found guilty of first-degree murder for Laci's death and second-degree murder for Conner's. I thought this was interesting. Scott's attorney did not show up in court for the verdict. On March 16, 2005, Judge DeLucchi followed the jury verdict, sentencing Scott to death by lethal injection and ordering him to pay $10,000 towards the cost of Laci's funeral. He described the murder of Laci as cruel, uncaring, heartless, and callous. Several alternative theories have emerged on this case, ranging from Laci being kidnapped by a satanic cult to being murdered by unknown intruders. The biggest controversy came in 2020 when the California Supreme Court overturned Scott's death sentence due to issues with jury selection. His conviction remained, but the legal battle for a new trial continues. In 2022, a judge
He
denied.
ain't getting out.
There's a lot of debate on this. In 2022, a judge denied his request for retrial, despite claims that a juror had failed to disclose his own history as a domestic violence victim, which could have influenced her decision. Scott Peterson is still in prison. He's now serving life without parole. He and his family still insist on his innocence, and his legal team continues to fight for a new trial. Scott's sister-in-law, who is a huge advocate for Scott's innocence, says there are several witnesses who saw Laci walking in the neighborhood after Scott left to go fishing, meaning he couldn't have killed her.
Oh, this is Laci's sister?
This is Scott's sister-in-law. Well, it says Scott's sister-in-law. It didn't say specifically Laci's sister, so
It could be like the brother's wife, his brother's wife, or something like that.
Yeah, not sure of the relationship there.
Okay.
A retired detective from the case said no one saw Laci alive after December 23rd. There were other pregnant women in the neighborhood that could have been mistaken for Laci. There was the burglary that was across the street from the Peterson home the same day Laci disappeared. Supporters of Scott theorized that Laci confronted the burglars while she was out on a walk and killed. However, the homeowners were out of town between December 24th and 26th, so it's impossible to discern what date the burglary actually took place. Meanwhile, though, Laci's family has never wavered in their belief that Scott is guilty. In 2024, the Los Angeles Innocence Project took Scott's case to fight for a new trial. A judge did grant them access to previously undisclosed evidence and to do additional DNA testing on the duct tape that was found on Laci's pants. On October 7th, 2024, a judge granted Scott Peterson's request for post-conviction discovery, allowing his defense team to access evidence held by the authorities, which they claim was withheld at Scott's trial. That's the last update I have on this. There's no further information that's been released. I think we're still waiting on a trial on this. Yeah. This case remains a point of fascination for the public still. Was Scott Peterson truly guilty beyond a reasonable doubt? Was the media sensationalism what convinced the jury? Is there another explanation for Laci's murder? I don't know. Regardless of all this, one fact remains: Laci and Conner Peterson never got a chance to live their lives. Yeah. Whether or not Scott Peterson receives a new trial, their story is going to continue to captivate true crime enthusiasts, and because, like I said, it has probably for generations to come until we get definitive evidence on this. Because I told you, I have heard this story on multiple podcasts. Yeah, I have watched documentaries on this.
No one's really sure.
No one is really sure, and there's no definitive evidence. Yeah. Does Scott Peterson look guilty?
Yeah. Fuck yeah. Really guilty.
Yeah. There's a lot.
But he's also a salesman, and I hate to hit down on it. They are philanderers, or a lot of them are.
It's very well. Let's rephrase that too. It's very common.
It is very common.
I wouldn't want to say they all are, but it is very common.
It is very common.
It is very common for salesmen to be, let me put it in the easiest possible words I can, con artists. Mm-hmm. I'm not pulling any punches here. My father was a salesman. He was an insurance salesman most of his life. He was a giant con man too. Mm-hmm. He conned a lot of people over the years.
Yeah. I grew up around car salesmen. Yeah.
Yes, I was in the car sale business, and the reason I got out of the car sales business is because I didn't like what it was doing to me.
Yeah, same.
It changes you. If you're a good salesman, you will do anything to make that sale. Mm-hmm. So we go here for Scott. Was he just doing anything to make himself look innocent? Was he conning here? I mean, he obviously conned multiple women. Mm-hmm. Or is he innocent? Is he truly innocent? You said somebody would have seen him. We don't know. He said he stopped to get gas. There's nowhere in this story that I read that wasn't from a gas container at the warehouse.
That's true.
No one says that he had to pull up to a pump.
That's right. Or like a boat pump.
Right.
And even if he did, he could have done it by a card. If the boat was on a trailer and he was filling the boat up from the pump, you drive the boat through on the trailer.
You do it by card, there's a record.
That's true.
So that's what I'm saying. I think because it's not laid out, the only thing I can think of is he had to have a gas can somewhere, somewhere to fill up. I don't know. I'm very curious. The evidence that's been held by authorities, new DNA testing. I think that's going to be the only way we're ever going to find out the truth of this story.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the story of the murder of Laci and Conner Peterson, and Scott Peterson. This is like I said, a very famous case. I think there's probably a lot of people listening right now that have at least heard of this case before, but maybe just didn't know all the details of it.
And heard it both ways.
Yes.
Like, this guy's totally innocent. They convicted him out of nothing, or this guy totally did it. Yeah.
I've heard it both ways. Yeah. I've heard podcasts that have covered this that have been on Scott Peterson's side. I have heard podcasts that have covered this that are completely that Scott Peterson is a murdering dirtbag.
Yeah.
I've heard both ways.
Yeah.
And
Well, I
that's
mean,
kind of why I went back
I'm
and
not saying,
forth on
yeah,
that.
he may not be a murdering dirtbag. He is a dirtbag.
Yeah, I think so. So anyway, thanks for taking that journey with me. Hope you learned
Thank
something
you.
new on the Scott Peterson case that
I
you didn't know
did. Thank you
before.
so
So
much.
you bet. That will take us to the end of another recording week. As always, you can find more information about us on nerderyandmurdery.com. That's our hub for everything we talk about here. You'll also find links to the topics that we discuss, as well as pictures, and the link to our YouTube page, which Zig so often update.
Thank you. Yes, you guys, get out, check out the Martin Scorsese playlist. Just check it out. There's all kinds of stuff. You can see what we're talking about from all over his career.
Awesome. You can also find the link to our merchandise page on our website. Our merchandise is where, if you want to show off your Nerdery and Murdery fandom, please consider purchasing something from there. That, along with our patrons, you can find our Patreon link on our webpage. But our merchandise and our patrons help with the costs that are associated with the show. It costs to keep us on the air, keep our uploads going on our website, and everything like that. It is not free, and it does everything does help keep us on the air. So we appreciate each and every one of you.
Please and thank you.
Please and thank you. And last but not least, please don't forget to leave a 5-star review wherever you can. Completely free and really helps us and helps others find our podcast that may be looking for the topics we discuss. So with that,
I have been Zig with your nerdery.
And I'm Geoffrey with your murdering.
Cue the music.
Static crackles, dream state, nerdery and murdery fate. Voices in the wire, two dudes like the fire. Obsession and confession, games in desperate session. Through the microphone they speak, dark secrets geek seek. Nerdery, murdery, crazy blend. Horror tales that never end. Dice roll, blood spills. Podcast thrill, the mind fills. Techie talk, ghostly howl. Keaton's graveyard prowl. England thoughts collide. Fascination can't hide. Retro vibes, ancient lore. Never know what's in store. On your fun adventure, bird each episode a twist. Learn nerdery, murdery, crazy blend. Horror tales that never end. Dice roll, blood spills. Podcast thrill. The mind fills. The mind fills. The mind fills. The mind fills. Techie talk, ghostly howl, Keatham's graveyard prowl. England thoughts collide, fascination can't hide. Retro vibes, ancient lore, never know what's in store. On your fun adventure, bird each episode a twist learned. Nerdery, murdery, crazy blend. Horror tales that never end. Dice roll, blood spills. Podcast thrill. The mind fills. 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 The mind fills.